news, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. Good evening, folks, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and I'm joined tonight by your good old friend, Unclemarc, who's snapping along to the music.
Oh, my word.
You were loud enough that it actually crackled. Careful with that.
Crackles?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know how that happens.
All right, so it looks like Josh hears us.
That's awesome.
The other Josh.
That's the other Josh.
Okay.
But this isn't Josh. This is Retna. We're also joined by Retna, who Mark is going to continually call by his right name because he's Uncle Mark's son.
Yeah,
Hi.
19 friggin' years. He's been Josh Richter, so it's going to be hard for me.
You just ruined all of any anonymity that he was hoping to keep. You just squashed.
The anonymization of me.
In one.
There's never going to... You were never going to be anonymous, dude.
This is going to be an interesting
show. It's right
show.
in your outline. It's right in your outline.
It's going to be an interesting show. All right, so tonight, so I don't know, you want to give us a quick background, like who you are, why you're here, and then we'll get into your topic.
Well, I've been doing this whole being Unclemarc's son thing for a while now. So, some of his, we'll call it wackiness, has rubbed off on me.
Wackiness? I don't know who you're talking about. He's not that wacky.
Dude.
I see he's looking at me. Spectacular. But,
I was actually... I'm monitoring the Twitch over here every so often looking for chat.
Oh,
so that's why you
but on the stream, it does
see
look
me
like,
look over to the side.
It does totally look like you're
look
looking
like
at him.
staring
It's
at
funny.
me.
You could like point at him. Yeah, you.
It's like the lady and the screaming ladies and the cat meme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, let him finish his intro. Come on.
But, yeah, so 19-year-old, going to tech school that I should probably not name here for anonymity, but fine, Stevens Institute of Technology, right in good old Hoboken.
Dude, like, you don't have to be anonymous. It's fine. Like,
Hoboken.
But, yeah, majoring in mathematics, because, that's basically computers if you think about it, but not too much.
It's a good base.
And, the reason I'm here tonight is, well, first of all, because the old man suggested I be here, but also because I'm here to talk about retro gaming and ROM hacking.
Cool. So, I guess we'll start with the basics, right? So, what have you done with both retro gaming and ROM hacking that would bring you on the show tonight?
Well, so I guess we'll just kind of start with a bit of history with me and that. So,
sure.
I'd say my interest with retro stuff started back in like first grade. What was that when we got the weed ad?
We moved here. Yeah, we got the Wii shortly after coming to Pennsylvania, which would have, and then, so that was in 2006, 2007. I don't remember having the Wii in the apartment. I think we got it when we so we moved
here.
Right, so first grade would have been you being a Cub Scout, 2009. So yeah, let's call it around then.
But, yeah, Virtual Console, that, it started an addiction, we'll say. I think the first
a little bit
retro game we got through it was either Super Mario 64 or Paper Mario. Honestly, they're both lovely games, so does it really matter? But
I feel so old that you're calling Mario 64 a retro game.
I mean,
so that leads to a question: what makes something a retro game?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that is hard to say, because like at this point, take like the Nintendo DS. That thing's been out since either 2004 or 2004 or 2005. So like it feels new, but you could call that retro because it's been like what 18 years now.
Yeah, well the N64 was like late 90s, 97, 98, 99 maybe, if I remember correctly.
96, but yeah.
Oh, was it that early? Okay.
Really,
yeah, I guess it would have been. I remember when it was new, right? I remember buying it. It's like, oh, this is awesome. And now it's retro. That's weird.
Yeah, it's really kind of just how you define it.
Yeah.
Like at this point, we're probably about to approach the year where people call it the PS3 retro, and that will make even me feel old.
I'm in that sentence and I don't like it at all.
Damn.
But yeah, let's see. So like first grade, I got into the official stuff, but then probably around maybe third grade or fourth grade, I'd say, I committed a crime. We'll call it emulation.
We're all guilty of that crime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Nintendo 64 emulators. Those things are they're a bit of a mess, but they're a fun mess.
yeah, yeah.
Never was able to figure out the controls for Donkey Kong 64, but we don't talk about that.
I think we just did.
Yeah.
We don't talk about Bruno. No,
this is
no,
also-
no.
Around this point, I think I also downloaded a SNES emulator, a Super Mario World ROM, and this
Yeah.
program called Lunar Magic, which, well, it's pretty much a ROM editor for Super Mario World, and I messed around with it despite having zero clue what anything did or what any of these numbers meant.
So
Nothing
that
came of it.
moment right there, yeah, that moment right there is that's similar to the moment when Linus Torvalds wrote that famous mail to the list, talking about how he's releasing this little kernel that probably won't ever go anywhere, and we know what happened to that.
Nothing. I totally went nowhere.
But yeah, then. But yeah, from there I just over the years kept getting into more stuff. Game Boy Advance has always been a big thing for me because it's almost a kind of thing I could have grown up alongside. Like, I think it launched in like either 2000 or 2001, and I was born in 02, so yeah, I kind of grew up alongside it. Except I never actually had one when I was young. But
I never
it's
had
still
one
a
either,
year
come
that's
to
like
think of it, the
really
GBA.
nostalgic for me, I guess. Which that brings us to the main thing I hack, which it's just this little Nintendo series you might have heard of called Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got into. Actually, no, I didn't get into it till like 8th grade. Wow, it's
Playing Fire Emblem.
yeah, playing it. It wasn't until so yeah, I got in Fire Emblem, played throughout high school, and then a little pandemic happened.
Ugh.
I gotta wonder how many people 10 years from now are gonna be like, then the pandemic happened, and because the pandemic happened, I learned this new skill, and that new skill changed my life. You know what I mean? I wonder how many
Well-
people are gonna be able to
Yeah,
say that.
That's the new origin story for everyone. Because yeah, like I'd say probably about halfway through my freshman year at college, I didn't really have much going on besides just virtual classes, being holed up in a dorm room for pretty much the entire day. Because
Right,
this is
'cause you're-
back when
Your freshman semester was fall 2020.
yeah, so I'd say
What a mess.
early spring 2021. Yeah, that's when I really started to get into hacking because, well, it's something to do and it's something to do with something I enjoy.
Okay, so I guess
That
So-
was not a brief history at all.
yeah. Well, I mean, it was brief enough. So
That happens on this podcast.
the first question that comes to mind, and this doesn't carry us into game hacking yet, which is why I want to try to get it out of the way, is
Of course.
I know from my own perspective why this is true, but why are you attracted to older games instead of newer games?
Stockholm Syndrome.
Because of
The
the
hell does
trauma
that
you
mean?
had to live through?
No, that's a hard thing to answer. Like, part of it's the fact that, well, they're easy to, as I was talking about, emulation's a thing and it's way easier to emulate something old than cutting edge stuff. I mean, you can emulate something like a Switch or a PlayStation 4, but good luck, we'll say.
Yeah, there's so much more power
Like there's
required to make
kind of
that
a
work.
monetary
Yeah.
thing, like you know, these older games, you can't really find them anywhere anyway half the time. So I don't know if I
There's a
should say this, but you feel less bad about pirating them.
So there's a concept called abandonware, and it's certainly not stood up in court in any way, shape, or form, from what I understand. But from a moral perspective, there's a lot of people, and I tend to fall into this spectrum, that believe that if a company has effectively abandoned their intellectual property and there isn't a way to buy it on a modern platform, it's less wrong to basically sail the sea and grab copies of it so that you can enjoy it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Like, I try and get these retro games physically if I can because, well, something in me just goes wild at the sight of cool old stuff.
He's
But
not wrong. The dude, if he showed you his room, like he's got a whole drawer full of like retro handhelds and stuff. He actually collects them.
I have a couple
yeah,
in the attic myself, to be honest. I have an old PS1, an
No, they
N64.
all work.
Well, no, these work. They're
They
just
all
not connected to
okay.
anything. And they, well, maybe they don't work. They've been in the attic long enough that maybe they've suffered a heat stroke. But
the rats got to them.
yeah, oh, there's
Yeah,
no rats.
but
Hopefully, there's no rats.
but in your retro, in your you say in your notes, old games are cool,
Yeah,
and I
but like,
think that can
there's just a
stand on its
certain
own.
charm to it because, like, you know, you have these developers working within these limitations, and they've made these games that I think still hold up excellently. Like, there's almost a timeless aspect to a lot of them. Like,
Yeah, to
if
to
you
me,
ask someone why they,
older games have a different feel to them than modern games. Modern games
yeah,
are beautiful experiences. They're, some of them are practically playable first-person movies, right? Which is great. That's
yeah,
awesome. We live in a great time for truly cinematic video games, but they lose some of that edge, I think, that older games had. One, older games were generally very hard, right? And not hard in the same way that today's games are, because there's some very difficult games today. But they were hard in that, you know, you had a level to complete. You only had so many lives. When those lives were gone, if you even had more than one, you started over. There wasn't even like you
yeah,
couldn't just
Well,
punishing.
like you couldn't just revert to the last
well,
quick save.
and you got to understand in the context of that, the reason was because
Yeah,
many
because of
of those
corners,
older games
arcades.
were right one for one ports of arcade games or
Right.
arcade
Yeah,
style
it
games.
took people
Were
a while
right.
to realize that people liked winning games, and that maybe designing your games where they're essentially repeated genital punches is, you know, doesn't make the players feel good.
Well, that's just it
Well,
though. There
I,
was a certain level of accomplishment you
But yeah,
got
then
when
there's
you
like
finished
some people
Mario
like it.
Brothers because it was not easy to get there. How many times did you have to
Yeah,
restart to do it? You had to be good, you had to know the tricks and the secrets to get through it. And, you know, now speedrunners are all about that exact same
yeah,
essence, right?
yeah. So it's kind of just this whole different mindset with designing older games, and there's again also the fact that they're easy to emulate. They're a lot of these older games, like these obscure Japanese only games, often become really popular through emulation because, well, through the magic of hacking, you can make them readable in English. Fan translations are a huge thing with a ton of games.
That's interesting. I never even considered fan translations. That makes sense. So they're instead of being well, I guess they would be titled essentially.
so that
The
kind of leads
text would
us
be
into the
translated.
question of what the hell is what is a ROM hack?
Yeah, right.
Because
Great transition.
hacking of course sounds like an evil term to a lot of people. Well, what's a ROM hack? Why is it a ROM? Like what's the genesis of that word there?
Well, so obviously, so the ROM is, well, the file itself that either it would be on like the game cartridge or in this case, you know, you'd like download a ROM online. Like for example, a GBA ROM would be like a .gba file. You download it, and that's pretty much like the binary of the game, and then whatever your emulator you have, or you know, you actually have a real system, like some kind of person from the Stone Age. You
Now-
emulator runs it.
Now I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious, right? So your description of ROM is spot on with what it is that's in a file that you refer to as a ROM file. However, there's a reason it's called a ROM file, and I'm curious if
Read-only memory.
okay, so it has translated. Good. I thought maybe this was one of those things that, like, you know, we call it a tape recording, but there's no tape involved, right? Anymore, because it's all digital, right? Or we call it a Band-Aid when there's no Band-Aid brand Band-Aid involved, right? So, right. So a ROM on an old cartridge was a chip, read-only memory. Those have been read out to a file. They call it a ROM file.
I mean, the Nintendo Switch, which is a current handheld, uses ROMs. The cartridges are ROM cartridges.
And
Yeah, exactly.
you know, the discs that modern games are on, you know, those are ROMs too.
Oh,
Obviously, but-
technically they are. Like a Blu-ray or a DVD is considered ROM at that
Right,
point.
so we've gone through
Yeah.
half the English language, but what about the other half, the hack part? That's well, it's kind of what it sounds like. You take a ROM and then, well, you hack it, you make changes to it, which that can take pretty much an uncountable amount of forms. It could be something as simple as, oh, it's Mario 64, but he's green now, to making like pretty much an entirely custom game almost from the ground up, but within like the base of like some other game.
So you would use the old game as essentially an engine, but change the content inside of the engine.
Yeah, basically. It's kind of like what mods are with modern gaming, but really, the distinction behind it is more just like the actual technical aspects of it, not like. And a lot of people just call, like, you know, ROM hacks. They do just call, like, mods, because, like, what's really the difference at the end of the day? You're taking something and breathing new life into it.
Well, I mean, I would argue it's a huge difference, right? It sounds like what you're doing is taking existing code and either extending or overwriting it, right? In order to do a ROM hack. So I guess that brings us to kind of the thing that's been itching in the back of my brain. How do you do this? Like, how do you modify a ROM? Are there tools you need? Do you like open it up in a binary editor or a hex editor or something?
That is where things start to get kind of wacky. What do you need for all of this? Well, first of all, you need a ROM, obviously. Which, like, technically, if you want to be above board, you have to, like, dump a ROM yourself, but raise your hand if you own a cartridge dumper for the SNES. No? Yeah, obviously. Again,
Right,
this
so
kind of
you're
gets back into the whole abandonware sort of thing. Like, technically, like, ROM hacking itself is perfectly legal, because especially like, because typically, at the end of the day, when it's like why you'd hack, usually, you know, you have the end goal of distributing it to the world in some way. Usually you do that in the form of a patch. Like, I think the common format these days is a UPS file, not to be confused with the postal service, where
or the battery backup.
It's essential. What?
Yeah, uninterruptible power supply.
Yeah,
of
UPS.
course. But you just like take a patching program, and the UPS is essentially a set of instructions that the program uses to modify a base ROM, so that way whatever changes you make, you can legally distribute.
So it's almost like
Because
a layer instead of overwriting, right?
Ogres have layers. So what you're saying is you're not distributing the ROM itself, you're distributing a change file that someone who legally owns the ROM can run against it.
Legally.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, of
that's
course
good.
it's legally. How else would they have it? I mean, nobody would be pirating
Yeah,
these
you
games
know,
from
we
30
don't
years
condone
ago.
piracy here.
Yar.
Right now that the lawyers are gone.
It's not piracy, it's liberation. Okay? We're liberating the software so that it can live a life of freedom.
Software wants to be free.
So you've got your ROM, and then that's one of the tricky sticking points of hacking. There's not necessarily one universal tool. Like, obviously, all of these games are written in hexadecimal, or yeah, a lot of these older games like in hexadecimal, so you could just crack open your favorite hex editor and just wildly change values, but that really won't go anywhere unless you really know what you're doing. And more often than not, you'll just turn your ROM into a brick.
So that's
Oh,
that's
boy.
actually when you have a ROM file, right? It's the thing that makes it not straightforward and simple to hack a ROM, right? Would be that the ROM is not code. The ROM is not a script. The ROM is not readable by humans.
Pretty much a compiled. It's pretty much a compiled program.
It's like bytecode, right? Or hex.
Right.
What you described, right?
So you would.
If you were to take an executable program, even on your computer today, and try to read it, it's all just gibberish. If you open it in a hex editor, you get something that's in some cases more readable, but it's still, unless you know how to modify hex, all you're really going to do is destroy it.
Yeah, unless you know not just how to modify hex in general, but how the specific, because like obviously every ROM, every system, like there's kind of different. It's structured differently.
Right. It's machine language for a specific architecture. So someone has to have the skill to run it through a disassembler to actually see what machine language instructions are being executed.
And that's one of the big elements of hacking that you need to keep. You need a way to disassemble your ROM to kind of get an understanding of it. Which,
yeah,
at this point, a lot of the popular. So we'll just move on a bit. So a lot of the more popular games to hack, like obviously earlier with Super Mario World, I mentioned this program Lunar Magic. Fire Emblem, there's this amazing program called FE Builder. A lot of more popular games to hack actually have binary programs, like binary GUI programs for modifying the ROMs. And those are, well, to put it simply, they're godsends, because they do the real heavy lifting of knowing how to interpret the game for you.
And so how do those work then? Like you say they're a GUI. Is it you're presented with something similar to like an IDE where you can type in commands? Or is it more like you get drop-down lists? Like Mario is currently red. I'd like to make him blue. Like how friendly are they, I guess, is my question.
So that's kind of a hard thing to like convey verbally, but
you're gonna have to try.
So
this is a podcast.
Really call it it's not really an IDE per se. Like it's not text-based code. Like, well, for example, so say open up a ROM in Fire Emblem Builder. You've got like this whole row at the top, buttons like editing various things. Like you have a character editor for editing characters. You have a class editor, item editor, map editor. Like it's pretty much a whole bunch of different editors, and within those are so it's very much like button based. It's not like you input a command to change something. It's
so are these custom written?
It's very intuitive.
Are these written to work with certain games, or is it more of a general tool that somehow detects the game? And
they're usually game specific.
Okay.
Like,
so if I were
Lunar
editing,
Magic works just with Super Mario World. You can't edit
okay,
Link to the Past with it.
so if my goal were to change Super Mario Brothers, I would, if I wanted this style of editor, I'd have to find someone who's already done the work to make an editor for that game. And then it would be smart enough to say like, oh, I've got Super Mario Brothers, and I know that Super Mario Brothers stores the character information in this, register. So if you want to modify that, it writes to that register. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So you can always do this stuff yourself, but why reinvent the wheel when well, it's just like any coding. It's less there's a whole lot more looking things up and seeing what other people have done than you'd think.
we've heard of, yeah,
Right.
there's some,
Yeah.
yeah, open source.
When
The whole
when
sharing.
when I want to make a piece of automation for one of my Linux servers, I don't pull out, you know, a text editor and create my own compiler from source and then build up from there. No, I get Ansible or I use Python
Pussy.
or Perl or something like that, right? Because someone's
Yeah,
already
that's
done that
really one of
work.
the
However, if I'm
that's
trying
one
to
of the
solve a
big
problem that
things.
has never been solved, I may have to do that. So this kind of brings us back to, what if I'm editing a game no one's ever cared about, but I do? No one's ever written a tool like you're describing, right? To do that, I have to basically take a step back and reinvent the wheel, right? So that would be the kind
Yeah,
of the reason you would be
but then
reinventing the wheel.
yeah, there's all sorts of different, like, there's general tools like, you know, assembly, disassembly. There's a lot of games there's console do things in similar ways. Like most Game Boy Advance games, or I think all of them really, you know, like they have graphics data in one area, they have sound data in another. So like part of it's kind of just knowing the organization of like how the system handles things, and that tends to help you narrow in when like trying to figure out a new game.
So you can use some trial and error because you understand this is where this is where the graphics data is. You
Yeah, at the
change a
end of
few things and you see how it impacts it.
at the end of the day, it's like any programming really. The most important thing is that you're extremely patient, because you're going to mess up a lot, and that you just kind of you have to keep persevering at it, keep just hammering away until you figure out, oh, this is how I do it.
So there's a question in chat from Jay Scar, and he's asking if someone wanted to get into ROMing or ROM modding, I suppose. Where would you start? Is there like a how-to that people follow to learn how to get this done? Do you already have to have a comp sci degree and understand how this stuff works? Or is there like a step-by-step procedure, or maybe some YouTube channel that people are using as like sort of the Bible for this?
That's a tricky thing to answer. So first of all, it kind of depends what you want to hack. Like, as I've said before, Mario World, Mario in general is ripe for hacking because it's popular and it's pretty simple. It's a lot of it's just about level design. It's not like there's some complex, like it, I mean, yes, it's a complex game, of course, but you know, it's not like the kind of thing where you need to have. It's like an RPG where you need to keep in mind like way more with like stats and often like lots of eventing and
Yeah, Mario
progress
is a much
flags.
simpler
Mario's
gameplay.
about as basic as you can get.
Mario can
with
jump.
but,
Mario
like,
has a certain set of items. Mario can kick things or whatever, right? And then there's the
so
world to
really
consider,
the best
right?
way to get into, but really you can start hacking with anything, and the best way to do it is I just recommend, again, like whatever game you're interested in hacking, just find whatever tools exist for it and just honestly just open the ROM and start messing around a bit. That's like really this is a sort of hobby where the easiest way to learn at first really is just by doing. And again, a lot of these editors are quite intuitive to use. Unless you're doing Pokemon ROM hacking, that is absolute hell.
Pokemon, yeah.
There are so many, I'm amazed there's not, like, some all-in-one tool, at least not that I've heard of. Like, there's a separate tool for almost everything with Pokemon. Like, there's a tool for maps, there's a tool for trainer, there's a tool for, overworld NPCs. There's, like, 5 different tools for editing Pokemon themselves. It's
Wow. Kind of crazy.
daunting.
So I guess the core of the question
It's
would
not
be
sweet.
like if you had 5 minutes to tell me how I might get started with ROM hacking, would you send me to a website? Would you send me to a YouTube channel or something? Just to like get the basics. Like say no, like they haven't even heard this show yet, right? Like oh yeah, go read this blog, or go watch this guy's channel or something, or really anything. Here's a tool I use that'll get you going. Here's the name of the tool. Like, do you have anything like that?
So again, yes, it's a very broad kind of field, so it's hard to give a specific answer. But there's one good resource is romhacking.net, which it's pretty much just well, it's what it sounds like. It's a forum for ROM
Sure.
hacking.
That sounds
They've got
perfect.
a whole little get started guide that kind of just goes over a lot of the basics that'll apply to most ROM types. Like, the concepts of hexadecimal, graphics,
Sure.
tables, because that's a big thing with a lot of games. Tables, good old
So,
CSVs.
I mean, there's a ton of knowledge out there that is best learned from a community and not from some tome, right? So that's a perfect example. If romhacking.net has a forum and there's a community there of people that
Pretty
are going to
much
help
every
people
game
get
with a
started,
big-
yeah.
Yeah, pretty much every game with a big hacking scene has a forum. Like, again, it's a broad question, but
Sure.
the resources do exist, and again, I think the best teacher is experience. And like, when I first started hacking, first of all, this is back when I was a chem major, which, doesn't really matter, but, I wasn't in pure math. But, like, obviously I knew some comp sci stuff, because how can I not, living with, this man? But, like, I wouldn't really say it was super knowledgeable. Like, I took an intro-level C++ course in high school that,
That
it
I
certainly
would
was an intro-level C++ course.
I would say that's probably more than a lot of people have that are
Yeah,
past
no,
high
like-
school, right?
But, yeah, like, you don't really need like, again, like, a lot of the tools are built such that you don't necessarily have to interact with a lot of, like, the really down and dirty hexadecimal stuff. A big part of these tools is, taking all of this information about about whatever you're hacking and making it more human readable.
Mm-hmm. Right. Assuming somebody has already written a tool. And I guess if you're just getting into it, that's probably where you're going to start. You're not going to start from the ground up. You're going to be like, oh, I want to hack The Adventures of Lolo. Does anyone know that game? I know that game. I remember that game. Anyway, I want to hack The
I don't know
Adventures
that
of
game.
Lolo. I'm going to go find someone who's already written a utility to help me hack The Adventures of Lolo. Unless nobody's written one, because no one knows that game.
Well, there's a level editor for it, Neptune, and another one called Haled.
Somebody
How did
already
you find that
has-
so quickly?
I looked it up.
Yay.
Power of the internet. Again, like,
Yay,
well,
the
this kind
internet.
of proves my point. You just look up game hacking, and then just, that's often enough to find some tools.
You are now ready to be a Red Hat technical account manager.
Yes, you can Google.
Yeah, I'm better than half your company.
I wouldn't be that mean.
Better than some of them for sure.
That's just mean. That's mean. All right, so we've already gone quite all over the place here. What do you have any more topics you wanted to cover before we close it up?
Oh, wow. Time really has.
Yeah,
flown.
that's like
Well,
this.
we've
There's
only-
this time dilation effect. Yes, we started a little bit late, but it is already almost 45 minutes in.
We started a quarter after.
But,
Yeah, which is a little late, Mark.
so most of what I've been talking about relates to, like,
We're
binary. I'll do a quick thing on, like, binary versus decompilation hacking, because, well, so a lot of what I've been talking about is, you're hacking the binary itself, making direct changes to the ROM file.
Right, which is why you probably want a
But,
tool to do that, because changing that yourself is going to be very difficult.
The thing with that is, let's say you screw up something while you're hacking, you save your ROM, and then, you don't notice it, and it's not an issue for a while, but then, you've made more edits quite a bit later, you're testing, and suddenly the ROM breaks, and, well, debugging's just become a lot more painful. So that's where, decompilation-based hacking comes in. A lot of games have, well, they've had decompilation projects where, essentially the entire game is rewritten in something usually. I think C is the most common because, well, it's C.
Sure.
So, like, with decomp-based hacking, you find the decompilation, clone it to your machine, and you can suddenly edit the ROM in a much more human-readable way than just hex editing, but you also get the freedom of, because you're never editing the ROM itself, you're pretty much making a build file or a make file or whatever you nerds call it. You get all the freedoms that
So-
gives you. You get to like set up, say, a GitHub for version control stuff, and that means if something breaks, it's just as easy as commenting out whatever offending thing you did.
So in my experience, decompilation is nowhere near as easy as it might sound, right? You might think,
it's definitely a higher barrier to entry,
like,
but it often allows a lot more freedom, because another thing, a lot of these GUI-based hacking programs, you have to work within whatever limitations the
Right.
GUI has.
right.
If you're doing a decompilation and you want to add a cool new system, you add it, and you don't have to worry about being restricted. So you trade off the intuition, like how intuitive and simple a binary hacking is, for a much greater degree of freedom
Right.
and of
Right. So
Control.
decompilation, usually what it'll do is, obviously your machine needs to be able to read the binary and make it do its thing, which means it has some concept of the logic. Decompilation will try to take that logic and turn it back into source code, right?
Yep. And
But there's a lot that it can't do easily, and it doesn't come out very human readable. So that's why there's a project around it, right? You decompile it, you get this pile of source code that's almost like it might compile back into the game that you decompiled, but you won't be able to modify it easily because you don't know what any of those functions are. It's like function 1, function 2, function 3, function 4. You're like, well, okay, which one makes Mario jump? Well, it's not called jump, it's called function 278, right?
yeah, decomps are definitely big community projects. Like, I mainly associate them with Pokemon because there's like, honestly, with what I said earlier about how there's a billion different tools, the decompilation might be more understandable, honestly.
Yeah, right, right. Because you're right. In order to get the most control over the game. So what you were describing earlier was you have a binary, you put like an overlay that essentially translates that binary into something else, right? So
yeah,
Mario is called, the jump function is called. This overlay somehow makes the jump function do something different. Or maybe that's a bad example. I picked up the Master Sword in Legend of Zelda. The Master Sword has been overwritten by a tulip, right? Or whatever, right? Whereas if you have the source, you go in and you say, the Master Sword is now called a tulip. Whereas in the other model, it's just substituted with a tulip, right? So you get a lot more control. Or, you rewrite the jump function to be like, I don't know, Mario catches fire, right? So, right, you get a lot more control over it, but it's a lot more work to get there, I think is the point.
Yeah, so like, the first Fire Emblem hack I did with pretty much entirely the GUI program I was talking about, but the one I'm working on now, I'm using... So, Fire Emblem, it doesn't... The main Fire Emblem people hack is the 8th game, which is actually the second game we got in English, because that's what happens when you're a fan of obscure Japanese series. You
It's kind of like Final
have
Fantasy.
to relearn numbers. But so there is a decompilation project for it going on, but it's far from finished. Instead, what I use my build file for is there's this program someone made in the community for inserting data into ROMs called EA Event Assembler. And it's pretty much an all-in-one tool that can insert pretty much any data you want, and it uses this pretty easy to understand syntax with these .event files. But yeah, so like, I've got a build file set up where, well, when I run the script, it pretty much just automatically puts my build file through event assembler, and within the master build file, it calls all the, the sub build files, like, calls all the custom definitions, it calls all the tables I need, it calls the text installer, it calls the graphics installer, that itself calls all the other. It's like, if you can't tell, it's like this very organized sort of thing.
Right.
And, like, this. Again, with how it's set up, you never actually touch the ROM itself. You, like, pretty much make a copy of the ROM every time, and then patch onto that. And for all intents and purposes, it functions very similar to how decomp would. Except you're not rebuilding the whole ROM every time, you're just appending onto it and replacing stuff inline.
Right. So I guess that brings up another interesting question. It sounds like you've done some work with some ROMs. I don't know what they are yet. Can you talk about like what you've modified? Have you released anything, or you have anything popular that people are playing?
Ooh, that's a great question, and it's got a great answer.
Sure it does. So as I mentioned earlier, the first hack I did was predominantly through the GUI program, which I believe I started it around like mid-March 2021.
Okay.
I think that's right. And I believe I had my, like, I've had a Discord server for it for a while. No, I am not giving you the invite.
Discord!
If you're so desperate to find it
Discord!
yourself.
Dang, that's not very open source-ish.
Well,
It's okay.
Called a challenge. I've said it's really easy to find ROM hacking stuff.
So now find it.
Find it.
So what's the
Okay.
game you modified? Give us a hint. What is it?
Well, I've mentioned it before. Pretty much all my hacking actually is Fire Emblem 8: The Sacred Stones.
Right. Okay.
Quick little history lesson, because that'll explain, teeny bit of context. So, the Fire Emblem hacking scene's been alive pretty much since the series first came to the West. But, before around 2017, it was kind of dreadful to actually hack. You had to use stuff like Nightmare, which, honestly, the name tells you all you need to know.
Just sounds
it's kind
terrible,
of a nightmare
yeah.
to use.
Yeah.
But it uses these things called Nightmare modules, which pretty much tell the game how to interpret tables of data. It tells the program where tables within the ROM are and how to interpret them, and it's like a fairly human readable editor, but it's kind of clunky and at this point definitely outdated. Though the Nightmare modules themselves are still used, because from them you get CSVs of the data, which those are absolutely lovely to edit.
Yeah, CSV would be a lot easier, I think. Considering they're
there's this
generally
tool
like
called-
text and readable.
There's this tool called Feditor, which was absolutely awful from what I understand. Like, it was just buggy as hell, but people still used it. It had utility. But yeah, despite all this, we had hacks. The most famous of the early hacks is probably The Last Promise, which it's definitely aged a bit, but it's still really impressive considering it was made in, like, I think around... Now I need to check the year. Wait, it was made in, like, the early 2010s, essentially, by a high schooler working with tools that can best be described as the equivalent of rusty sponges.
Rusty sponges.
Like, again, a high schooler doing all of this, which that's just beyond impressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to remember that a lot of this industry was built by bored high schoolers who decided to write
Very
code in
true.
their basement. So,
There-
you know, it's not
there's,
not that weird.
There's a reason it's called a dongle, because in
Yeah.
a high schooler probably
Nerds are like high schoolers.
Yeah, right.
There's not a question about that.
but yeah, that. But then in like 2017, that's when we got FE Builder, which that's like, again, the hot tool for hacking because, well, it's easy to use and extremely powerful.
Cool.
And yeah, since then, like, that again, hacking's like been a thing for a while. Like, there were hacks released, but after Builder dropped, oh boy, the community's been in a bit of a renaissance, we'll say. And like the main Fire Emblem hacking forum is Fire Emblem Universe or FE Universe, and that place is if you're at all interested in the series that and what the community's done to it, there's no shortage of really high quality stuff.
Yeah, I see in your notes here you put a couple names of utilities for Fire Emblem. So if anybody's curious specifically
Yeah,
about editing Fire Emblem, there's a bunch in here.
Yeah, because again, that's what I know best.
Yeah.
Again, use Builder, Emblem Magic. That poor Emblem Magic. From what I heard, it dropped like a few weeks before Builder and was also a pretty good GUI tool, but then Builder just kind of overshadowed it completely.
So this
But,
this is a pretty interesting scene, I gotta say. I love seeing people being innovative for a thing they're passionate about, and that seems like exactly what this is. This is people
Yeah.
trying to make tools to continue enjoying and
Making
modifying
tools, there's,
games that they like. You know.
Yeah, thanks to all this stuff, I did something no soul should ever have to do. I know Game Boy Advance Assembly now, and no one should ever have to suffer through assembly, especially Game Boy Advance Assembly.
But people have to suffer through assembly, otherwise we wouldn't have the things we have.
You have a better appreciation of the giants whose shoulders you're standing on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Now, I was looking at that other window. Did you mention the glory you got from your hacking? Like, you got some recognition.
Oh, yeah. Like, I wouldn't say I'm super popular, but, you know, if you threw my name around in the right circles, they'd probably be like, oh, I like that guy, or, oh, I hate that guy.
So you're kind of a big deal? Is that what you're saying?
But you won a
on.
contest, right?
Oh, yeah, there was this, like, one of the servers I'm in had this, like, little hacking contest where you make a one-chapter hack, which, that's less a technical thing and more just, like, a game design sort of thing, but, yeah.
That's technical.
I did that time.
There's a lot
Game
more.
design's so important.
There's a lot more to game
famous.
design than people think.
Very true. And part of
Yeah.
it's knowing how to work with the limitations your tools give you.
That's true for every single game.
Back to what we were saying about why people like older games. That's another part of it. You have to work. You have to work within these limitations. You have to work with the fact that most things in these older games are limited to a byte worth of data. Like,
Right.
you know, you can only have 255 of most things because that's all byte can do for you. So you have to, you know, you kind of have to work within that. And there's people have come up with clever solutions, like, you know, squeeze more out of the item list.
In Trade Wars 2002, if you were to edit your ship, you could only have up to 65,554 fighters. You know why? Because that's the size of a 32-bit integer. 16-bit integer.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There are certain numbers as a nerd that you just recognize.
Yep, 65535. I learned at an early age, not because I cared, but because I wanted to be able to figure out how many fighters I could put on a ship in Trade Wars.
But
So I guess one more thing that just kind of makes me curious after all that you're describing here and the sort of like passionate community around here, right? So I've seen this happen where somebody's latched on to a certain technology, even if the technology seems useless to the world at large, right? I mean, game hacking, you could say like, yes, there's a niche of people that find this fascinating, but in general, doesn't really change the world much. Could you imagine turning this into some kind of a career, or maybe being a jumping stone to a career that you might be interested in, like say game development, for example?
well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like doing all this, gets you familiar both with like how to design a game and like what makes them tick, and it's also yes, when you're working with a program that throws hexadecimal at you, you're gonna naturally end up picking that up, and that's just yeah. I've picked up a lot more comp sci than I thought I would. I'll say that much. Again, Game Boy Advance Assembly.
Yeah, I mean you're dealing with code. You're dealing with code here. Some of it's compiled code,
And that's
some
what-
of
At
it's
the end of the day, it's
binary
all
code,
code.
but it's code.
And that's what often happens, right? Your passions, you suddenly realize that your passions are applicable. When I was interviewing to do the Linux job, I actually pulled out the work I did with my Neverwinter Nights Persistent World, which
Yep.
parts of it were a lamp stack,
Yeah.
Linux, Apache, stuff like that. So it was really, it was my experiences in my hobby led directly to work relevant stuff, which I then, turned into a career, which I'm told I'm pretty good with.
Yeah, right.
I don't know who told you that.
Blah 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 blah.
They're all just trying to make you feel better. That Chairman's Award thing, that was all just to prop you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought of this like as a career stepping stone. It's more, yes, something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, well, when I was
That's-
hacking around on
experience
BBSs
is
and
nice.
stuff when I was a kid, I never thought it'd be a career path, and here I am, right?
And not everything has to be about your
Oh, yeah.
career. Not
Yeah,
everything has to be
absolutely.
about making money. But it's nice when you can do things that you actually enjoy too.
Yeah.
There's a certain benefit to that.
All right, so are there any points we missed on your list here? Or did we cover everything?
Nothing really
think
screaming
we-
out to me. Like I feel.
There it went again. It crackled. Stop that.
Thanks, old man.
Oh.
But yeah, nothing.
She's fast
really
enough
that
for you, old man.
Nothing that I really felt like we've missed. Like I feel
We jumped
again,
around
like,
a bit,
all
but
this
it's.
stuff.
I think we got it.
All this stuff really. It's if you're interested, it's all about just knowing where to look. Which again, these forums are. You're not the only one interested in hacking, so take advantage of that. Talk to people. There's
That works for so
servers,
many.
There's forums,
That works.
like
That works
really,
for so many things.
like people think it's some big terrifying thing where you have to like do everything yourself. No, you steal from people.
No, you don't steal. You
In a
build.
good
You
way.
build on other people's success. Is what you do. You don't steal.
You stand on the shoulder of giants.
J-Scar heard your scream finally on the stream, and he says he's awake now.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he dozed
Good.
off. I hope not. All right. So if anybody's listening to this and they want to reach out to you to ask you questions about ROM hacking or whatever, is there a way people can get a hold of you? Or a Twitter handle, or a social media thing, or a fancy Discord server you're not going to give us the name to?
Discord.
I mean, I'm in the Iron Sysadmin Discord. That counts.
There you go. You can look up Retina in the Iron Sysadmin Discord. If you need an invite to that, you can go to ironsysadmin.com, or you look in the notes of this
Yeah. See, look.
show.
If people want to talk to me, they have to come to your server. We all win.
That's it. We all win. You'll have to come to our community and hang out and talk to Retina. All right. Well, this has been a fun topic. It reminds me, and to be honest, it didn't even occur to me when we started talking about game hacking. But there was an old BBS game I used to do a lot of hacking around on, called Tele Arena. I know that Mark has played it, because we've talked about it in the past, and this reminds me a lot of that. Because it's another one of those cases where we didn't have the source, and people wanted to extend it and change it because the developer had essentially abandoned us. Very similar story to what you're describing here. So brings back a lot of memories. All right, folks. So this is going to wrap up the first half of the episode. We're going to go to a break. Anybody who is listening, if you want to hear the second half, just look up the B part of episode 122 in your podcasting app, and you'll find us there. If you want to find us online or watch the stream live, and you're not checking out the second half, although you should go to Twitch or YouTube and look for the Iron Sysadmin podcast. There's also links for those in the notes to today's show. And for everyone else, we'll catch you in the second half of the show. So, do you have any final words, either Mark or Josh? Keep on hacking, maybe?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, we're going to go to a break, folks, and we'll be back in a few. Let me just find the thing here. Here's the break page. All right, here we go. We'll be back in a bit. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysAdmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysAdmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/IronSysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/IronSysadmin. And thank you.
Oh, sorry.
You done there, Mark?
Yeah, maybe.
Welcome back, folks. This is part B of episode 122. If you did not listen to part A of episode 122, you should go do so. We talk all about ROM hacking and retro games and a few other things. And with this guy here, Mr. Retina.
Yeah.
There, over here. I'm pointing.
Yay!
Yay.
Point and laugh at the man.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we do our usual announcements and things, and that always starts with how grateful we are of all of our patrons. So we're going to list all of you off and thank you each and every one, although I'm not going to say thank you every one. I'm just going to list you and then, thank you. You can just, there's an implied thank you at the end of each line, okay? So, or maybe the beginning of each line? I'm just going to read it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Zed Thor, name pending 197.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Thank you.
Jeremiah. Aranami. Andrew.
you.
Tatro.
Thank you.
Now we're
Thank
over
you.
top of each other. Bruce.
Okay. I was thanking them, but
Bruce,
I'll stop.
Yep. Robert. Matt. David. Solemn. Trooper-ish. Linux Sys 666. Mark with a K. The Mentor. Or D-Mentor if you want to find him on various platforms. Mark with a C. Julius. Andy. J. Charles. And 22532. Thank you. Each and every one of you are appreciated. Thank you. And if you want to support the show,
All the heart.
you can not only do that via Patreon, you could go to Teespring and you could buy yourself a shirt. So you can go do that too, because everybody.
And that way you won't the top half of you won't be naked.
And you can buy the shirt in every color, as long as it's black. At least I think it's
Regular
only
Henry Ford there, huh?
Yeah, right. Any color you want, as long as it's black. All right. We didn't get any new reviews. That makes us sad. Or happy. If you're going to leave a bad review, then obviously it's good that you didn't leave it. Because, we don't
Thank you for not leaving a bad review.
We don't love bad reviews, but we don't mind bad reviews because, we like the feedback. We like to know what we're doing good, what we're doing bad. If you like Mark singing or not. Don't beat up on poor Mark.
Only I get to do that.
I hope that guy's doing well.
So do I.
Hope he's found
Hope
joy.
he's not lying in a gutter with a bottle.
Hope he's found joy in life. Maybe he's moved on to some other podcast to criticize over their co-hosts.
Maybe.
We don't know.
Probably.
We will never know. I don't even remember what his name was. Some guy didn't like us.
I'd have to look him up again, and I'm not doing that. No,
Yeah.
he didn't like me. Let's be honest. He didn't like me.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
He thought I brought no value to the program, and in fact, he thought I dragged it down. Ugh.
I disagree.
Ugh.
I disagree.
Well, thank
Otherwise,
you.
you wouldn't be here anymore. If I thought
Well,
you were
right.
negative, whatever. All right.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, record time. We're through all the announcements. What do you got going on, Mark? You got stuff to chat about today?
Yeah, so I got my Steam Deck. It showed up. Let's see. It'll be 2 weeks on Monday. You talk about the Steam Deck, I guess, like a newborn. He'll be 1 month old. Next Tuesday. But yeah, so the Steam Deck showed up. I'm one of those guys who, when the Steam Deck was first being talked about, I was a little skeptical. I think, Josh, you and I talked about this a little bit even, right? Like, handhelds have never been really my jam. Not nearly as much as they've been like
he got
Josh's.
sucked in.
But
He spent the past week playing this $3 zombie game or vampire game or
Vampire Survivors, right? So the Steam Deck, for those of you, the Steam Deck is a Linux machine. So the Steam Deck is actually the culmination of something that's been a little bit of a passion of mine off and on for years, and that is the ability to tell Windows to get bent.
Yes.
Like I want to be able to game on Linux.
it's okay.
And
Windows, I
so-
still like you.
Yeah. Well, Windows for me right now is for virtual reality gaming. And Microsoft, by the way, they fixed what they broke with Flight Simulator 2022. They had broken some of the stuff in VR, and I did a test flight yesterday, and it's working again. So I'm very happy about that. But
Yay!
yeah, but so
Yay!
so the Steam Deck runs such titles that I'm addicted to, such as Elden Ring. It runs it great.
Yay!
Death Stranding, which is a beautiful game. Some people have just called it a cinematic walking simulator, but there's actually a game in there. Looks great, runs great. Cyberpunk 2077
Nice.
looks great, runs great. I started a new character on it and played a little bit, and it's definitely something I'm going to continue to pursue.
Does
Probably runs Cyberpunk better than my gaming rig,
does
and
your,
that's the thing.
Does
It's
your,
like
does your character's genitalia stay within your clothing now? Unlike it did
uh, I don't know.
on PC. It didn't check. Okay.
I am playing with genitalia, uh, but I haven't been in a situation where
I
it's
just-
where it's.
I just remember
What's
that,
that?
as one of the craziest bugs that I heard about from the Cyberpunk
Yeah,
2077 launch.
I didn't see that particular bug,
Neither
and
did
I played
I,
a male-
but I heard about it.
and I played a pretty well endowed male character on my first playthrough, so I think I would have if I was going to say it.
Yeah, well, you know.
Yes, for those of you who don't realize it, there was a slider, and of course I threw
Yeah.
it all the way to the right because why wouldn't you? Oh my God! And here I am talking about this with my son on the podcast. That's real classy, real fucking classy.
It just to me, it's like, if you're gonna make a game that not only your character has configurable genitalia, you would probably want to make sure that the clothing in the game like actually covered said model. It just seems very strange that was a bug to me. It's like that's insane. I guess they never tested it.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate your vote of confidence. Without me, there'd be no show tones. So the big technological achievement I did yesterday was I installed Chiaka on it, and Chiaka is an open source PS remote play client that runs on Linux, Windows, Mac OS, whatever. And with a little bit of turning a couple of dials and stuff, it's playing my PS5 stuff remotely on the Steam Deck, and it's beautiful. The graphics are amazing, and I think I was having some audio crackling at first, and I think I've solved 99% of the audio crackling issues. And so that is just like a huge win. Because sometimes, like when I want to play the PS5, somebody is maybe using the big TV, or I want to play it somewhere else in the house, and then obviously the game's on the deck itself. I've got it docked right now, but the it really is like you're playing AAA games anywhere. And yeah, like Josh pointed out, one of the little games I've gotten slightly addicted to is a little $3 gem called Vampire Survivors. It's a one-stick shooter. Your weapons all fire automatically, and you just move around using the left stick. And it's really, really fun. And you just keep unlocking stuff. There's no microtransactions at all. It's you unlock based on earning coin in game and getting achievements. And it's just it's you're causing the bullet hell, just slaughtering thousands of enemies each run. So if you got $3, and who doesn't? It's less than a cup of Starbucks, like fancy coffee.
I feel like I don't at this
Buy
point.
Vampire.
We'll talk about that in chat.
Yeah.
Oops,
Okay.
I hit the mic.
Hit
the mic with my beer.
The
problem with
so
podcasting.
I heartily.
17 hours, Father.
Yeah, don't judge me. I heartily endorse the Steam Deck. I had some initial hiccups when I first got it because I was downloading so much stuff that a lot of Steam people don't realize this, but basically the Steam app is essentially a web service. Yeah. So when you're chewing up all the bandwidth with downloads, the UI is sometimes unresponsive. But now that I've got pretty much everything I want to play installed on it, that's really not an issue any longer. And the things run on Arch. it's running Arch Linux. You can switch to the desktop mode and like have a full Linux desktop experience, command line and everything.
That's cool.
And it's powerful. It's it's four real cores. So with hyperthreading, it's 8. Got 16 gig of RAM. The video performance is fantastic. I actually honestly can't believe how well it runs stuff. I really can't.
Have you tried Valheim on it yet?
Yeah, and it works.
Cool.
Using the controller scheme for me is a little weird because with Valheim I'm so used to mouse and keyboard. But Valheim runs. I could do Tamland on Valheim. Walt might be grumpy if I get killed because I'm not good with the controller, but that's just a risk you take. And I can say Walt because he doesn't listen to this.
Yeah, I was gonna say when is he not grumpy?
Well. So, in other nerd news, on my PS5 Elden Ring save, I killed the Elden Beast the other day with help from a nice co-op player, a lady with 2 giant friggin' hammers. We showed the Elden Beast what was what. I was making progress, but I ended up summoning co-op help. Most of them were terrible, but she did carry me a little bit. I am not ashamed to admit that, but it was a great fight. And so now I could go into New Game Plus on that save if I wanted to, but I'm going to just finish a lot of stuff I hadn't finished, and I'm helping our coworker Mark, who's also playing on the PS5, get through some stuff.
Yeah, it's
you and I should really play on Windows, man.
Yeah,
on the PC.
I've played a bit of Elden Ring, not much, and then I mean, for reasons that I'll go into when I'm chatting, I haven't really played a lot of games other than Valheim while we were playing together the other night.
That's okay.
So yeah, it's like it's the usual problem with me. I buy a new game and then I play an old game that it reminded me of. Right.
I've done that.
So I'll probably get to Elden Ring
charged
when the next awesome game comes out. So.
I've done that, man. And then this is something I've never done. So my daughter's getting married in November, and there's a little bit of contention over the daddy-daughter dance song. My wife really wants us to do Daddy's Little Girl, which, whatever, it's fine. It's not my favorite, but there's the song from Beauty and the Beast that my daughter and I both like, no matter what. And I thought, I've got this world of very clever artistic people.
Yeah.
And I've seen other people like go out and commission things like on Fiverr to do like really cool stuff. So I actually opened a commission on Fiverr. Going to cost me $15. This dude in Morocco is going to mash the 2 songs together. And if it's terrible, it's terrible, but it could be awesome.
That could be cool, and then you have a unique song, not just any old song.
A unique song that hopefully satisfies my wife and me and Maggie. I mean, it's our song, right? If push comes to shove,
yeah,
I'm
that's
doing
exactly
the song
what I was going to
do.
say. I mean, you have to live with your wife, right? But for me, the answer is
yeah.
simple.
But this
you use the song that has the most meaning between you and your daughter. That's the whole point.
Right. And and that's what I will do, but I like the idea of trying to do a mashup with the 2 because I don't hate Daddy's Little Girl, but it's such a cliche at weddings. But it is kind of meaningful, but I really like the other song more. But if I can mash the 2 together with the help of this dude from Morocco, like that's amazing. That validates inventing the internet.
That should be cool.
So
yeah,
that's only going to cost me $15. He said he'd do it for 10. I'm like, well, let's make it 15. I negotiated weird.
You negotiated
up,
that.
And he got excited. Well, his package to do this is like 15, so I don't know why he was quoting me 10. I'm like, no, I'll give you 15. So
maybe
he's like,
thinks,
oh, yay.
Maybe he thinks it'll be easy, or maybe that's his shtick, right? He's like, I'm going to cost 15, but because I'm a nice guy, we're going to charge you 10.
I don't care. To me, like
$15.
If he pulls this off. If he pulls this off, it would be worth far more than that. Yeah. So whatever. We'll see what happens.
That's cool.
But that's what's going on with me.
Cool. So I don't have nearly as joyous a story to tell. It's been a rough couple of weeks. My God. So I think I mentioned this before. In fact, the reason we missed our last show is because my wife was scheduled for foot surgery. right? The Friday that would have been the
Kicking
day.
too many people in the ass.
Yeah,
Hurt her foot?
that would have been the day after the show. Well, long story short, insurance is frustrating.
That's one way of putting it.
So, like, her surgery was supposed to be Tuesday of that week, and we got a call that said, "Oh, by the way, the insurance is not going to cover this one piece of the procedure. So, what do you want to do about that?" And so we did some legwork to figure out, like, well, what's it going to cost if we pay for that piece out of pocket? Turns out it's not a terrible amount of money. It's more than I would have wanted to spend, but and this just highlights the flaws in our medical system in the U.S. But they said, "Oh, it's going to be $12,000," and we said, "Well, we can't do that. I'm sorry, we got to find another way." And I said, "Oh no, hold on. You're paying out of pocket.
Can't you just chop it off?
You're paying out of pocket. So if you're paying out of pocket, there's a 80% discount." Now, in my head, the pessimist that I am when I'm dealing with billing thought that meant we pay 80%. No, it's 80% off. If you're self-paying, it's only $2,000, just under $2,000. So 80% or 80% off of almost $12,000 turned out to be like, I don't know, $1,800 or something. I'm like, well, that's not great, but we can make that happen, right? Like, I can't pay it the day of the surgery, but we'll work out payments. I can pay $2,000. That's not a big deal, right? So we're like, all right, cool. So they rescheduled it for that Friday, right? And we show up Friday. They prep her for surgery. She's about to be wheeled back for surgery. The doctor comes in. We can't do surgery today. Why can't we do surgery today? Well, there's this fill that's going in a bone in her foot. They sent it back. So we can't do the surgery. It's not here. I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. So, we didn't have the show Thursday because Friday she was supposed to have surgery, and I wanted to make sure that I got to bed on time and all that stuff, right? And then we didn't even have the surgery, right? So then the following Tuesday, we finally have the surgery. Well, over that weekend, a total tangent here. A couple weeks ago, in fact, about a month ago, I bought a trailer to tow the Jeep around with. Remember, like a year ago, I bought a Cadillac so I could tow the Jeep? Well, I finally bought the trailer to tow the Jeep because we have an event this weekend where I wanted to tow the Jeep out, right? Well, a friend of mine had straps. You have to strap the Jeep down on the trailer, right? He had straps that he wasn't using. He's like, "I'll sell them to you cheap." So I drove out in my Jeep because it was a nice day to go get the straps from him. And on the way back, the Jeep won't run anymore. I have to have it towed home. So that's step one, right? So I get home after calling AAA. I get home. I get the Jeep in the garage. I'll deal with this later. That week, we have Jess's surgery. So I figure out what's wrong with my Jeep. It's running again. And the following weekend, I have a reason I wanted to go up to the off-road park with some friends. So I put the Jeep on the trailer. I hook the trailer up to the Cadillac, and I think, great, maiden voyage. We're going to tow the Jeep up to the off-road park. We're going to have a fun day. We're going to tow the Jeep home. Cool. This is the whole reason I bought this thing. The freaking Cadillac breaks down. I end up on the way home from the off-road park, I end up having to call AAA to tow the Cadillac home. Now, I don't know if you know much about AAA. They won't deal with your trailer. So I had to take the Jeep off the trailer, take the hitch off of the Cadillac. I had to take the hitch off the Cadillac and put it on the Jeep. Luckily, it has a receiver on it. And tow the trailer that was towing the Jeep home with the Jeep.
I actually followed all of that. And when I hear you have a Cadillac, what I imagine is this baby blue Cadillac.
No, it's a Cadillac Escalade.
And you're wearing the wide brimmed hat.
No, it's basically a Suburban. It's the Cadillac version of the Suburban, which is the Escalade, right? It's got a bigger motor than the Escalade
car,
or than the whatever. So anyway, it towed beautiful until it broke down.
No doubt.
So now I have one vehicle.
It's like customers. It worked until it didn't.
I have one vehicle broken, right? And then the Jeep, I did some things to fix it. It ran okay. Obviously it towed its own trailer home without exploding, but it still isn't quite right. Then like the next day, My wife also has a Jeep. Hers is not nearly as modified as
The
mine.
next day.
The next day, I'm out because now all of our vehicles are broken. So I'm driving her Jeep to go like grocery shopping or something. And doesn't hers throw an ABS sensor problem, right? So I'm like, every vehicle I own is now in some manner of not right. And
Oh boy.
on top of all of that, our washing machine stops working. I'm like, can there be any more? What's gonna fail next? Like, is the house gonna burn down?
I wouldn't ask that question.
You're right. I shouldn't ask that question.
That's a terrible question.
Yeah.
To ask.
So now I took the Cadillac to. I had no headspace to deal with figuring out what was wrong with the Cadillac because I don't know the platform, I don't know the engine, I don't know the vehicle. I just took it to my mechanic and I said, "Make it work again." Like I don't know, just fix it. So I took it to him.
Make it go.
He looks at that, right? Today, the reason we were late starting the show is because the thing that was wrong with my wife's Jeep was it needed a new the wheel speed sensor is part of the wheel bearing on the front of the Jeep. So today, like in between calls and meetings and whatever, I'm like 5 minutes here, 20 minutes there in the garage trying to replace the wheel bearing because this weekend we're going to this event that I was supposed to tow my Jeep out to. I have no faith at this point in the tow vehicle to tow it across Pennsylvania, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to drive her Jeep out to the event because it's a Jeep event. I can't show up in something that's not a Jeep, which was the reason I needed to get her fixed. So, yeah.
The other kids would make fun of you.
People would make fun of me. So I'm not going to have my Jeep, which is kind of a disappointment. But to be honest, with gas prices the way they are, which are freaking insane, I wasn't looking forward to towing out there anyway. It was going to cost me $300 round trip just to drive out and back. So yeah, it's been a bad couple of weeks. On the bright side, the Cadillac's running again.
There.
The Cadillac's running again. My Jeep is relatively stable and working again. Her Jeep is fixed, and she had her surgery.
Okay.
The washing machine's not fixed yet. That's next on my list. My God.
Are you working tomorrow?
No, I have off tomorrow to prepare for the trip.
Which is when? This weekend, you said?
It's this weekend. We're leaving after the kids get home from school, which they have a half day. It's their last day of school. We're basically leaving right after that to go out to the other side of Pennsylvania, out toward Pittsburgh, to the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. Supposedly, Bantam is the birthplace of the Jeep. I guess it's where they manufactured the first Jeeps. I've never been, even though it's right across Pennsylvania. So I'm going to go there and check it out. Should be fun.
You enjoy that.
I'm going to try. But my God, so many things working against me here. I got to say, like, I have talked before on the show about how I was on kind of a mission to get my debts lowered and get some money into savings. God, am I happy I did. Because otherwise, this would have been, like, I wouldn't have had money to fix the Cadillac. It would have gone onto a credit card or something. I wouldn't have been able to fix her Jeep as quickly as I did. Now, granted, I've eaten into all that savings at this point. I got to start rebuilding, but at least I had it. My gosh.
You got to let it go, let it go.
Yeah, right.
Like that.
Right. So, at any rate, that's my tale of misfortune since our last show. Freaking crazy.
Boy.
Life is never, it's never, I never get one thing wrong at a time. It's always like a landslide.
It can happen.
It can, and it did. All right, well, I don't know, Jock.
You have any?
Anything
you
want to chat about?
Retina.
Anything fun going on in your life? Did your car break down and then your dog run away?
No,
It's a country song.
Yet.
Yeah, it's a country. No, it'd have to be the truck
Yeah, I
broke
don't
down.
really. I mean, a lot of what I've been doing, finally the summer. So, since I'm not dealing with university because of that, I've just been taking it easy.
University.
Dude,
Well,
we're from
what-
Jersey. We don't call it university. That's what British people call it.
What do we call it then?
We call it college
Or school.
with that Jersey accent on it. College.
College.
Oh, tut tut! I'm at university. Tut tut. So Josh and I braved Morbius last weekend.
Oh, yeah?
Amazing movie. 10
Yeah.
out of 10. I liked the
We-
part where he said, "I'm gonna morb," and then morbed all over those guys.
He did not even say he was. He never says that, by the way. So
No, but that's what the meme
it was
would have you
actually
believe.
that is what the movie would have you believe.
It wasn't good. Like it wasn't some good.
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
Make no mistake, it wasn't a good movie, yeah, but it was
was
not
fine.
nearly as
Like I'd give it a solid 5 out of 10, 4 out of 10.
yeah.
My
There are movies that
my wife saw it. She liked it. I don't know if it's like her top 10 favorite movie or anything, but she watched it a couple times, so that makes me think that she enjoyed it. So, I don't know.
it's like a guilty pleasure. It's like from a overall quality, it's probably like so. Like one of my favorite guilty pleasures is Armageddon, which I get. Armageddon is objectively a bad movie.
Not a good movie.
It's just ridiculously over the top. A lot of the acting's terrible. It leans on explosions and Aerosmith guitar riffs at dramatic moments.
And Liv Tyler.
And it's so hammy. It's so hammy. It could produce Easter dinner. But I just love it. Like it's just I legitimately really like the movie. And so Morbius, while not a great movie or even a particularly good movie, probably is around the same quality. There are movies that I have yelled at the screen after watching because I couldn't believe I wasted my time. Highlander 2, for instance, so bad. There was a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. It was either Cyborg or Cyborg 2 that I actually paid money to see at a movie theater in college. That was
Cyborg.
terrible.
Did I see that? I can't remember now. I might have.
Oh, so bad.
Well, most
there
of
are
Van
movie-
Damme's movies were definitely in the B movie range.
This one was a C movie, I think. But yeah, right. Foolish mortal. What are you getting into? But
Yeah,
I think Morbius was actually altogether not nearly as terrible as people make it out to be.
I'm trying to find it in my Twitter history here, but you guys might remember Charles, who was once a co-host on the show. He and I are both into fun, terrible movies. Him so much that he goes to a festival where they watch terrible movies, and he shared.
He's
this,
talked about that.
Yeah, B-Fest. He shared this movie poster to a terrible movie a couple days ago, and it looked so bad I want to watch it, but now I can't find it. I don't remember the name of it. It
Well,
looked
that's
like
okay.
it was like this image of cowboys in the sunset and a giant gopher-looking monster.
Oh,
But even
Good
by his
Lord.
standards, it was bad, and he likes bad movies. So yeah, I can't.
well,
find it
and
here. I
my
don't know where it
son, my son actually owns a copy of The Room on DVD on purpose,
It's a good
Yeah.
which
time.
is
I love it.
oh, Lisa, I did not hit her.
Well, I haven't watched that yet, but you guys talked all about it. I intended to and haven't yet.
Oh, it is awful,
Where is this dang?
But fun.
awful.
Now it's
And
bothering me.
it's like
It was
it's
like
way cheaper than it has any right to be.
it was like the God Monster of Illinois or something.
Yeah, only
It was
$11.54 on Amazon. That's a bargain.
Yeah, a bargain.
crazy. A bargain. I gotta look it up. Where is
The
it?
podcast listeners love listening to you type.
Where
That's
is
amazing
it?
content.
I'll have to look it up and I'll add it to the.
Where is it? I did not hit her. You tied me apart.
All right. And speaking of listening to people type, I mean that was you during the whole first half of the show, so don't complain about me.
Was it?
Yeah, you were like typing something furiously. Were you like writing a blog post or something? My God.
Talking about bad
Mm.
movies, go watch anything by Neil Breen. That is classic stuff.
All right, so I think we finished chat. We talked about bad movies. We'll put a section here for Retina that says we talked about bad movies.
I don't know how we got. Oh wait, Morbius. We morbed.
Google has corrected it for me. No, God damn it! I typed the thing. Let it go. You missed the cue.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I'm looking at the first news article. Okay, bye. A little bit of Alice there.
All right. Yeah, I think we can go on into the news. What do you think? Is it news time?
I'm glad that's my legacy, Morbin.
Morbin?
Morbin.
All right, I'm going to hit the button. No, that wasn't it.
Push the button, Frank.
So, like, unfortunately, the push the button Frank and the Homer Doe are they're next to each other and they're similar colors. That's why I got it wrong. No. So, in the news, honestly, the news is full of things that aren't necessarily news, but they're more like links I wanted to talk about. They're newsy,
Okay.
news-ish, news-related, news-adjacent, perhaps, you want to say?
Yo, Teen Vogue.
Yeah, so the first one is an article from Teen Vogue, which is not exactly the sort of place that I normally read news, but this bubbled up somewhere, social media,
Did
something.
your daughter show it to you?
No, she does not read Teen Vogue. But anyway, it is a opinion piece. In fact, you might even
You're
almost
an
call
opinion
it
piece.
not opinion, but more like fact, because it's all about trying to identify facts. It's called Conspiracy Theories, How to Spot Them, and What You Need to Know. And the reason I bring it up is because the world today is full, I think, like stricken, social media anyway, is stricken, with ever since the pandemic, and really a couple events before the pandemic, if you can think back that far, to life before the pandemic, people having a general mistrust for anything they read or see anywhere, right? Some of that is valid, I think, right? I mean, I'm like a Gen Xer myself, and Gen X is known for not really trusting authority. I'm fine with not trusting authority, but the lengths some people go to not just not trusting authority, but being flat out contrary to what authority is telling you, right? So,
Yeah.
So throughout the pandemic, there's stuff like, oh my God, we got to burn down the 5G towers because they're spreading COVID. Like, that's a perfect example of conspiracy theory gone crazy, right?
Right. The 5G towers got switched from causing you to turn gay to spreading COVID.
Yeah, right?
And they forgot
right?
to flip that back.
Right. So anyway, this article, and I did read through it, believe it or not, which is, unusual for me. Goes into a number of sort of methods for trying to spot a conspiracy, right? Not a conspiracy, but a conspiracy theory, right? And how to sort of protect yourself from falling into the hype, because that's exactly what a conspiracy theory is meant to do, right? It'll cherry pick facts and it'll throw them at you. They are, in their own right, usually true, but they throw out all of the evidence that refutes all those things, all the context, right? All the things that should have come along with that fact, right? And I would love to come up with a witty example right now, but I didn't. So I'm sorry about that. But
So it kind of harkens back to Obi-Wan in the third movie, when Luke is like, "You told me that you killed my father." Well, Anakin Skywalker died the day Darth Vader was created, so it was true from a certain point of view. All right,
I guess that's a good example. But
yeah.
So
that's not going to inflame any listeners,
right? So facts taken out of context are then presented as fact without all the context, and then these conspiracy theories are built. And then you have world leaders. I'm not going to name any of them, but world leaders who almost support the conspiracy theories, right? And that didn't help anything. But anyway, the article goes into a lot of ways to try to help protect yourself from falling into the hype, falling into the false truths or the half-truths. And I think it's worth reading for anybody who really spends any time online on social media, because it's everywhere on social media. I can't log in to Facebook without running across somebody who just appears to be completely batshit insane, right?
You're not wrong. If you want to fall down a rabbit hole sometime, this predates the pandemic, but read about sovereign citizens. They're crazy people who think that if they say the right magic combination of words. They don't have to like pay taxes or follow traffic laws or drive without a license, because I'm not driving, I'm traveling, and the Constitution says I have a right to travel, even though I'm not a U.S. citizen because I was not born in the District of Columbia or one of the territories. They're crazy, and they often end up tased. So many of the videos are fucking hilarious. Uh, there's a lot of sovereign citizen videos of them being pulled over, of them trying to like, and they're adjacent to First Amendment auditors, who are people who take a phone or a camera and try to record in buildings even when they're not supposed to, and those are always
Right.
worth a laugh. And there's sometimes tasers involved there too. So, but yeah, there's a huge rabbit hole, and what happens is people are hurting, they're disgruntled, whatever, and they read or listen to a YouTube video that sounds like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Right.
But and the truth is being hidden from us, when in fact, no, it's all garbage.
Because
But
it's presented in a way that sounds true, right? Because
yeah,
they get quote unquote experts. Some guy in a lab coat comes out and starts talking about vaccination, right? Well, obviously, he must be a doctor. He's got a lab coat.
well, one of the current Kennedys, Robert Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, whatever, he's a crazy anti-vax conspiracy theory person. And he basically, leans on the famous name of his family for credibility.
Yeah, that's a shame. But I see it a lot in folks who try to stand for freedom, right? And there's this fine line between freedom and just like craziness, right? So yeah, I generally I believe that people should be free, and they should be free to have their own thoughts and their own opinions and whatever, but not at the cost of other people, right? So that's
Right.
like and that's getting to be a gray line, right? Like I feel like people should be free to make choices as to what kind of a shot they get in their arm. But on the other hand, you're listening to lies that tell you that you shouldn't get the shot because, I don't know, whatever, it gives you
Whatever
5G or
BS,
something, right?
true reason, yeah,
Um,
or
and
kill you
what
or
I
whatever.
what I really cannot stand is when false information is now holding humanity back, right? So you spread all your false
Yeah.
information because you don't believe it's false. You don't even think it's false because you've fallen for the conspiracy. I'm going down a rabbit hole, and I probably shouldn't. My point is,
You are.
read the article. It gives you tips. It's geared toward teens. It's in Teen Vogue, right? And I honestly, this is probably a good audience for this sort of thing because teens
Yeah.
teens are susceptible to this stuff. I can remember when I was a
They're
teen
suckers.
trying to read up about all these weird conspiracy things about, like this group of people that are above the United Nations that are pulling all the strings in the world, and it's really easy to fall into this stuff. Now, luckily, I didn't. Like, I eventually realized that it was all fake. But some people don't, and they think it's true, right? So, anyway, Bill Gates, he's trying to kill off humanity or something.
Why would he do that?
Exactly. That's my point. That's my point. And that again, the article brings this up. If you take the slightest effort to disprove the theory, you will find multitudes of facts. But if you also take the slightest effort to try to prove the theory, you will find things that prove it, because it's what you're looking for, right? And that's part of what the article goes into. What do they call that? Confirmation bias? Isn't that the word for that?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Where it's like, I think a thing is true, so I look up things that confirm that it's true, not necessarily things that tell me it's false. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting read. Go read it. Now. Go now. Not right now. Wait till we're done with the show.
Whatever.
Wait till we're done with the show. Then you can go read it. All right. The next one comes from 9 to 5 Mac, and I included this because I thought it was extremely ironic. You've heard of DuckDuckGo, DuckDuckGo, right?
Mac.
So DuckDuckGo
Mac.
is a search engine that a lot of people switched
Yeah.
to because they were tired of the privacy concerns that you get with Google. Now, Google's pretty upfront about the fact that they take your search data, and really any data you'll give them, and they use it to sell you things. They use it to advertise at you.
Yeah,
I believe they even sell that information to other parties, right?
gasp.
So I know,
Yeah.
right? But they're upfront about it. They say this is what we do. This is a thing that we do.
Yeah.
But people don't like that because they want to keep their privacy. So DuckDuckGo says, well, we don't do that. In fact, I don't know. I didn't go look up DuckDuckGo's terms of service or something. But I'm led to believe,
Quack.
maybe it's a conspiracy. I'm led to believe that DuckDuckGo does not do that, right? Well, apparently, all this time they kind of have. They've been allowing specifically Microsoft to track results or whatnot on DuckDuckGo searches.
Because Bill Gates is into genocide. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's it. Because Bill Gates wants to kill us all, right? Isn't that how this goes? So I included the article here if you want to go read about it. There's actually some interesting information where people looked up, like they tracked the trackers. You know how you can do that with like the web console or whatever in your browser.
Yeah.
And they found that in fact DuckDuckGo is reporting information back to Microsoft.
Quack.
For what purposes we don't really know, I suppose, but probably for advertising. And that's kind of annoying, right? Like I feel bad about this because not bad like I did something wrong, but bad because we thought DuckDuckGo was a better solution, and it turns out that they weren't. Now I'm still using DuckDuckGo. I didn't like boycott them or something because I still feel like they're better than Google from a privacy perspective. But what this brings to light is you've got one party that tells you, yeah, I'm selling your data. At least they're honest about it. And then you've got DuckDuckGo that we all went to, and it's like they're not being honest about it.
Now? Are you talking the search engine? Because I've dug into the tweet, and it looks like they're talking about DuckDuckGo being a browser.
I thought it was a search engine they were talking about. They have a browser?
Used to be a search engine. That
It is a search engine.
the DuckDuckGo private, yeah, but it says
Oh, you may be right.
You
They have a
won't-
privacy-aware browser, which makes it worse.
I just use Brave.
Yeah, but Brave advertises at you too.
I don't care. I think it's better for me. It's never going to be 100%.
Yeah.
It's never going to be 100% pure. And for me, Brave is, and I'm going to be honest, and you can bust my chops all you want about it. My use case for Brave mostly revolves around watching YouTube videos because I friggin' can't stand watching YouTube on the platforms where I see the ads.
Yeah.
And Brave is just fantastic about that. If I accidentally go to watch a YouTube video on my phone or on my PlayStation, like, oh fuck, an ad. So,
That's 'cause-
Brave it never happens.
That's because you hate content creators.
Some of them I do.
All right.
But I'll give them a like and a subscribe, whatever.
Yep. So yeah, that's not okay. But again, I didn't exactly boycott DuckDuckGo. I don't know what else I would go to be honest. Like, what's left? Bing.
Yeah.
You know for sure Bing is reporting to Microsoft. They own it.
Again, I think you got to be careful of the context of the DuckDuckGo here. I think it's their so-called private browser, not the DuckDuckGo search engine.
Right. Okay. So anyway, all right. And our last article, again, not necessarily news, although it is news adjacent, comes from Politico. So obviously, Politico is a political news outlet or article outlet.
You're a troublemaker today.
So I'm trying not to be too political here, although it's going to be really tough to not get political here. So if you live in the U.S., or really if you live anywhere, you've probably heard that there was kind of a string of mass shootings last week and the week before, or was it 3 weeks? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
terrible that these things blur together anymore in the U.S. And as I've said before on this show, I am a gun owner. I support the Second Amendment. And I still think that there's a problem here, right? I still think that this is something kids should not have to be afraid to go to school. Parents should not have to be afraid to send their kids to school. This is a problem. I don't care how deeply you want to defend the Second Amendment. This is a problem that needs to be fixed. And of course, we have politicians on both sides of the fence that are painting it as a very binary problem. We have guns, we shouldn't have guns.
Because
Or no, we need to have guns because it's the Second Amendment and you better not infringe upon that. It's obviously not the guns. It's a mental health problem. Nobody that I've heard anyway, no one that makes it on the news is painting it as a both problem. It's everybody seems to be one side or the other. This article from Politico, two professors found what creates a mass shooter. Will politicians pay attention? Now, obviously, that's a little clickbaity, but if you read the article, it's actually quite informative. It's an interview style piece where they give you a nice little preamble, and then they just have an interview with these two professors. Now, the professors are, let's see, one of them is a professor of criminology, and the other is a professor of criminal justice. So these aren't like comp sci or like liberal arts folks, right? It's not like an English professor. These are people that are familiar with the criminal element and statistics related research related to these things. And they have analyzed and interviewed a number of mass shootings and mass shooters in cases where the mass shooter had survived. They even found folks who were about to commit a mass shooting and decided to back out. And they interviewed those people. I don't know how they found those sort of people. Like, do you just ask on Twitter, hey, did you ever think about killing a bunch of people and decided not to? Come talk to us, right?
This is a rough article, but there's a lot of good content.
It is a rough article, right? And it's very sensitive, and that's why, like, the reason I want to bring it up is because I think there's a lot of valid information in this article. And the way these professors have painted this is it is not just a mental health problem. It's not just an access to guns problem. It's a both problem, right? They suggest things in this article that address kind of both of them, right? So first of all, they have identified that, and you've probably noticed this anecdotally, I have, where when there is a mass shooting, there tends to be follow-on mass shootings. And they suggest that this is because, say mass shooter A finally gets up the courage to commit his mass shooting, right? Which, by the way, they suggest is generally not just because they want to kill a bunch of people, but it's because they feel hopeless, thus suicidal, and they have a message they want to send. And this is the way they feel that they can actually get the attention they need to whatever issue they feel has caused them to be hopeless, right? So we saw it with the grocery store guy from New York. Was it Buffalo, was it? It was up in New York, where he went into I forget what even convenience store that was, and he shot up a bunch of people in the name of replacement theory. Now, replacement theory, going back to our first article, is a conspiracy theory that suggests that white people are being replaced by minorities in this country. Again, not really backed up by fact, but he thought it was, and he thought that, the issue needed attention. He felt hopeless, and he committed his mass shooting. Then, I think it was within a week, we had the shooting in Texas, right? So you can see the trend here, right? Now, they weren't related in any way. It's not like one pushed the other. But what they suggest is that, you're contemplating doing something like this. You see somebody else do it. You see the fame and notoriety, or at least the attention to their issue that they get, and you are now emboldened to do whatever it is that you were about to do, right? So they suggest that cutting down the number of mass shootings by giving generally school-aged kids better access to mental health professionals will globally, not globally, but nationwide, cut down the number of mass shootings, because you'll have less of this, domino effect, right? So, and they suggest that the easiest way to do this is to get some funding to put mental health professionals accessible to school students. Like some government-funded thing where they put not just a guidance counselor, not like the gym teacher that's been co-tasked with the student's mental health, but an actual mental health professional. And then train the teachers to help identify kids that appear to be struggling with, whatever, right? I don't know how to identify kids that are struggling like this, but that's the point, right? Train teachers so they can report this to the mental health folks, and then tie that into these red flag laws, which you've probably heard about, that are supposed to help law officials identify people who may already own weapons that are also a threat to themselves or others, right? And there's a lot of, I've heard a lot of back and forth about, oh, these can be so easily abused. People can be disarmed with using these things. And again, I think this is a misinformation problem. And the article even addresses that, right? Red flag laws are not really well understood. They're not well enforced. Apparently, the shooter, I think it was in New York, they mentioned, or maybe it was the one in Texas, showed a bunch of signs that should have triggered a red flag law and didn't. I think it was the one in New York, because there are red flag laws in New York. There's not red flag laws in Texas.
Yeah, the article talks about that.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that this article should get some more attention. I'm not trying to push one agenda or another. I just want to see kids safe. I want to see people in general safe. And I want to see, I mean, as unpopular as it is to some in some crowds, I want to see our Second Amendment protected, right? But not at the cost of lives. And that's a tough line, right? Because there are, for every mass shooting, there's probably millions of completely responsible and safe gun owners that should not be punished, because there are people who are using weapons to hurt people. Anyway, I'm going to try to get off my soapbox. If you have any comments, go ahead.
No.
No comments
I'm
at
good.
all. Yeah.
I could make a comment that you got to be real careful about data-driven stuff, because then you end up with, what was that Tom Cruise movie where you get put in jail for crimes you haven't committed but you're going to?
Sure.
Minority
yeah,
Report.
there's a lot of
I
science
don't-
fiction that shows us how this
I don't think we're at that
this
point.
can be bad. But I think this particular issue, and probably a lot of issues, right? If you can boil it down to data, if you can boil it down to a formula that seems to be cooking, and that's a repeatable thing, I think it deserves some attention. Maybe it's not, and maybe it doesn't get turned into, squads that go out and hunt down people because they think that they may commit a crime in the future, because that's science fiction has showed us that that's a bad idea. But I think trying, and if somebody is identified as problematic, it's not like you throw them in jail. You get them help, like real help, not quote unquote help, which is isolate them from humanity or take away all their stuff and make them more angry, but actually get them help, get them psychiatric help. Like that's not just gonna help prevent a mass shooting or a suicide at the least harmful to society end of the thing. It could turn their life around. They could go from a desperate human being to a productive member of society, right? Like, what's the harm in that?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, go read the article again after the show's over. Although the show's almost over at this point, because this is the last article we have.
For realsy.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that's all the news, I think. We didn't have anything else in there. You didn't add anything when I
Any
wasn't
thoughts
looking?
on the news, Josh Richter?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
All right.
That was overall the least technical flavored news we've had in a long time.
It has
That's
been.
okay.
Yeah, I was going to try to find some more techie articles, but to be honest, I thought both of those, the conspiracy theory article and the mass shooting article, would probably spark discussion, especially if Jason had been here.
Yeah.
Because I've had conversations like that with him in the past, and generally we land on different sides of the fence, and it doesn't always go well. Although he is very civil when disagreeing with someone he thinks actually has a brain and not just a talking head. So anyway. All right, folks. Well, I think this will be a relatively short second half of the show, although I guess it isn't
And
that short.
I'm gonna add a fourth news article, which is completely relevant for
Okay. Because we didn't have enough time.
for this.
Oh,
yeah.
the GameCube.
Well, it's relevant for,
It's relevant for the subject matter today.
and again, hard drive is sort of like the Onion.
Yeah, I love how they're
But it's
okay
a-
with putting profanity in the title of their their article. All right, so go ahead, talk about the GameCube.
We had one.
I have one in the attic. It's one of those game systems that I said I have in the attic.
We had the GameCube when we lived in Tom's River when Josh was little. So I don't even. How much did you play with the GameCube, Josh?
I don't think a ton. Like, this was back when I was real young, so yeah, not really a ton.
It was our first.
yeah,
It was our first system we had Animal Crossing on, which for his sisters was a big
I'd say
deal.
The this article is accurate. That fucker did indeed rule.
All right.
Didn't wasn't
So
the,
I just thought.
wasn't the Wii basically just a revamp of the GameCube? Didn't have similar guts to it? Didn't have like the same graphics controller and
Ooh.
everything?
Yeah.
Them's fighting words a little bit. What the Wii brought
No,
was the unique controllers.
Yeah.
The Wii was very similar tech-wise to the
Okay.
GameCube.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Just
And
the GameCube didn't do too well sale-wise. They just kind of used a lot of it for the Wii.
yeah, the GameCube
I thought the GameCube was pretty popular.
It was like it didn't do badly, but keep in mind the PS2 is by far the best-selling games console of all times, and
They were
GameCube
around the
was
same era.
competing with it, so
Oh, so it was fighting Sony. Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, the GameCube
Well, that makes
didn't do
sense.
as well as it could have because of the competition in the market at the time. It was a good game system. I thought it was a good game system. Had an ATI chipset. You can see the little logo down there in the corner, which was a little less common, and maybe not in that era. In that era, ATI might have been a little bigger than they are today. Today, it's like Nvidia or nothing, right?
ATI was huge back in that day.
Yeah, Their PC graphics
Huge.
controllers weren't awesome. Like they were good, but their drivers were always like problematic, if I remember correctly.
Right, but if you're building to a specific hardware platform,
Yeah.
then who cares?
Yeah,
you got to
and-
get the drivers right once.
An integrated graphics adapter for a hardware game system like this, it's probably the perfect use case as long as they get the driver right. And you're right, they don't have the breadth to have to deal with. So yeah, GameCube was fun. Every now and then I break that out and play it just for fun. I think there was a Mario game on that I played a lot, but there were some first-person Metroid games that were a lot of fun. Metroid
Metroid
Prime.
yeah, those are classics.
Yeah, those were good. I have those somewhere. Good stuff. Was that the first disc-based Nintendo game system too? They use those little mini discs.
Unless you count the Philips CDI, yeah.
I remember
Nobody
the
counts the Philips CDI. That thing is terrible.
the Sega Genesis was the first optical game system I remember with a CD-ROM connected to it. The Sega CD.
Yep.
That was crazy. Ah, the old days of gaming systems. I have a lot of memories of this. I had a friend that always had the latest and greatest game system. When I had the older Nintendo, he had the Sega Genesis. When I had the Sega Genesis, he had the Super Nintendo. Whatever.
Whatever.
Privileged young kids. All right, so I think we're done for tonight. This has been a fun episode. Some trips down
Indeed.
memory lane for me
As you would say.
with the old gaming systems and some heavier talk in the news, but I think worth talking about. All right, folks. So
Sure.
if you stuck with us live tonight, thank you for hanging out. I think we lost just about everybody, like we usually do. Second hour always has less interaction than the first hour, but whatever. It is what it is. Thank you
We
guys
forgive them.
for watching live. If you did, if you want to watch us live, look us up on YouTube or Twitch. Just look for the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. If you want to find us on social media, either Facebook or Twitter, find the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. In fact, Twitter is simply just Iron Sysadmin on Twitter, twitter.com/Iron Sysadmin. So it's pretty easy to find there, and that's where we share most of our stuff anyway. Facebook's only there because there's people there, and I reshare stuff on it. Yeah, and if you want to chat with us, or if you want to look up Retina and talk about ROM hacking, look us up on the Iron Sysadmin Discord community. You can find the link in the notes for today's show, or go to ironsysadmin.com for links to just about all this stuff. Support us on Patreon or Teespring, and I think that's like everything. Teespring. Do I need a?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think I do. Maybe I should. Josh, you look like a floating head in a dark world.
Yeah, my
You need a
plan of just turning off the light in my room, kind of backfired now that it's dark outside.
you need a
it's
black
fine.
hoodie to go with it. Being lit up by the
Clearly.
computer screen. Anyway, all right, folks, it's been a fun episode. Any final thoughts while I'm looking for the goodbye page here?
Nah, we good.
Come on, say something
This is exciting.
while I find the thing. There it is. All right, folks. Well, thanks for watching,
Good night,
listening,
gaming
whatever.
nerds.
We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one.